Well, welcome everybody. I will start by just briefly introducing myself and thanking ArtsKC for having me share some information with you today. My name's Joseph Frost, and I own a company called Your CMO, which is a fractional marketing system for businesses and nonprofits both, and developing strategic marketing plans in a fractional way. We have full-time chief marketing officers that split their work with a couple of clients at a time. And my other business is called Frost Media Group, and we've been working with nonprofits in that business for the last 12 years, producing video content for events to help with fundraising and awareness. We've got an office in Kansas City and Omaha. But today I'm talking to you about blind spots in your digital marketing. Some stuff that Mariah and I thought would be worth spending some time on in the next 30, 60, 90 days. We're maybe having some chance to revisit some of our internal marketing efforts and external marketing efforts during the COVID situation and the current pandemic. So I am going to walk through this presentation. We have a do-it-yourself document that we're going to provide at the end that will go into great detail into how we do all these different steps. So that's going to be available to everybody. But I want to kind of take you through what we see the digital landscape is. Because I'm sharing my screen, I can't at the same time, it's not giving me access to any of the Q&A. Let me see if I can pop it on the side. So if it does not look like I have an easy way to get questions popped in. So I don't mind if Mike / Mariah or somebody else wants to jump in with a question from time to time, please do so. And I will stop and try to give some specific answers along the way. So when we look at and we'll have a good 15 to 20 minutes at the end for questions as well. So there'll definitely be some time dedicated to questions. So when we look at the digital landscape review, there's all different things that apply to digital marketing and that we consider your digital landscape. Some of the more common are your social media, your Twitters, your Facebook, your Instagram, YouTube. SEO, people think about SEO, search engine optimization, search engine marketing, Google AdWords, Facebook ads. There's online events, there's email marketing, there's activation from your digital marketing channels. There's all sorts of different things that make up this digital landscape. And we're going to just focus on kind of a microcosm of this today, something that's a little more tangible that can get done and add real value from your organizational standpoint. Why is the digital landscape so important? First, it really represents your brand online. It's the first form, it's kind of the first impression of your company or organization to potential attendees to your events, to potential donors. And it's really the customer's first primary method of contacting you these days is through digital media, email or online or social. So what I like to share with people is this one stat that makes some sense if you've ever spent time thinking about buying something yourself. 60% of a prospect's journey before they start reaching directly out during a sales process is online. 60% of the information that your audience will ever learn about before they reach out to either attend an event or find out more about you is typically done online before they even talk to somebody from your organization. So it's critical that your digital landscape is well thought out and put together. Some of the things to think about before we start digging in to do a digital landscape review is trying to realize that this has to fit inside your overall organization. It's got to be organizational goal. It's got to be a your greater organizational business strategy. And when we look at organizational goals when it comes to marketing, this snapshot of what a B2B organization looks like for marketing, brand awareness is a big component of that type of organization. Lead generation is next, all the way down to kind of customer evangelism and customer kind of towards the bottom of that tier. each of your organization is going to be a little different depending on what you do and really depending on what you're doing right now with respect to COVID. There may be an event that's coming up that you're looking to make more of a virtual event, or you might have any events going on and you're just looking at getting some more brand awareness in the marketplace. Depending on your specific objective, that really determines what your digital landscape should be doing for you. One last slide to kind of point out before we jump into building or walking you through how to take an assessment of your digital landscape is understanding that there are really 6 fundamentals to marketing that are stronger even now than they were before with the COVID pandemic. These are fundamentals for all of your marketing activity, but specifically applied to digital are very important to understand. And the first fundamental is knowing where you're going. We like to companies really think about a 2-year marketing goal as the best way to drive a direction for your marketing, but then use 90-day shorter planning periods to try to prioritize and move towards that 2-year goal. Once you know where you're going, focusing on really understanding who your buyer is, and this is where it gets really tricky for different organizations, because when you think about your buyer in a typical organization like yourself, it could be thought of as a potential attendee to your event, or it could be thought of as a potential donor or to your organization. They're 2 separate buyers in the traditional marketing sense. So when we think about understanding your buyer, if we put the lens on how do we get people to more events, how do we sell more tickets, that buyer is going to have a very specific personality. They're going to have a profile. They're going to have a journey that they take to find and come to your events. And it might be a trigger from an online social media ad that they saw, or it might be a trigger from a friend that says, hey, come to this event for me. Or it might be a trigger from an organization that they work for that says, hey, we're sponsoring a table at this organization, please show up. There's lots of different triggers. And then there's a lot of different things that happen between ultimately how that person engages and to come to your events or work with your organization. Understanding those buyer journeys are really important, because then we can, from a marketing perspective, think about how do we message to those different audiences along that journey. There's typically a trigger point. There's some steps that they take, and ultimately there's a decision criteria to either come to your event or to purchase something at your event. There's different messaging that needs to happen along that way. That's the kind of the third fundamental. And you really need to position yourself in this third fundamental different from your competition. So you stand out in their minds and for why they would want to engage with you. Then the fourth fundamental is understanding that marketing and sales need to be in alignment. Brands are important and branding is important, but really the function of marketing is to drive sales, whether or drive revenue, depending on kind of how your organization is set up. But if you think of driving people to attend events, your marketing should do that. It's not about building pretty pictures and creative slogans if they don't help with the objective of actually getting some things sold. The next fundamental is having a real cadence for planning and accountability. And this is really important from an execution standpoint. We believe that you should have those 2-year goals, but that you should meet quarterly to set real focused priorities for each quarter from a marketing perspective. And then you need to have a marketing scorecard, 5 to 15 metrics that are really measuring how you're doing marketing that you look at on a weekly basis inside of a short 30-minute weekly marketing meeting. If you put those execution steps in place and have that cadence, then you can be looking at your event campaigns in real time. You can see what the signups are, what the email open rates are, what the click-throughs are, and you can really make adjustments on the fly as opposed to trying to do these on a monthly or even an annual basis. The weekly check-in is critical for execution success. And then last but not least, having a structured approach to advertising. Only after these other kind of 5 fundamentals in place should you be thinking about spending money. Too many organizations and too many agencies really start here with how can we spend your money right now to get more people to your event. You have to understand these other fundamentals first before you start thinking about, should I spend money on Google? Should I spend money on Facebook ads? Should I spend money in print? You can answer those questions better if you have all these other fundamentals in place. So as we look at an audit, we typically have 6 steps, or 6 portions of these fundamentals that we look at inside of a comprehensive audit. Today, I'm going to focus really on this fundamental 3, the positioning step, when we look at your digital landscape reviews. That's where we can, in a snapshot, really get a glance of how your marketing looks from an online perspective, some blind spots and opportunities to fix things that we can dial into pretty quickly for you. So a typical digital landscape review, it kind of ends up looking something like this, where we've taken a look at your website, your organic search, your social media, your online reviews, your email, and your paid social or your paid media. And we've done some key checks to some specific things, and then we've made some comments along the way. We're going to walk through the process to do that by taking a look at the ArtsKC example. So we started building we started walking through these steps using the ArtsKC website, not the ArtsKC Go website. So there's 2 websites with ArtsKC. The ArtsKC website is the more general nonprofit website, and the ArtsKC Go site much more focused on attendance to events and your organizations. Well, we picked the ArtsKC website because it gets less attention than the KC Go website. And so there are more blind spots. So there's more things that we're able to kind of pick and show you as an example as we go through this process. So the first step is really taking a look at your website performance. Your website is the primary hub for all activity. 57% of all website traffic comes from mobile. So if your website is not mobilely responsive, if it's not fast, and if you're not tracking the analytics on a regular basis, you're kind of you're at a disadvantage. So we check 3 things with our digital landscape review: site speed. So I'll show you a quick website that'll give you an instant indication of how quickly your site loads. The reason speed matters is because if you've ever loaded your own website or someone else's website and it's slow to load, it instantly gives you a bad impression. It gets you a little frustrated, and people will bounce off and not even stay around. Responsiveness is another thing that we measure, and responsiveness is all about taking a desktop view and scrunching it down to an iPad or a mobile and making sure that the website looks similar and as good on all different types of devices. Now, most sites these days are pretty responsive. It's not as bad as it used to be, but if you do not have a responsive site in this day and age, you're at a major disadvantage. We also look at dead links. We want to make sure that every link on your website, anything that you link out to, goes to a real world site. And this is quite eye-opening when we did the check for ArtsKC. Because if you can imagine, you've got maybe blogs and content from 10 years ago. There's some things that just aren't there anymore. So these dead link checkers help you see those and fix those right away. And then finally, making sure that Google Analytics is installed on your website. It's a free tool. It's critical to have for any type of optimization work that you want to do. So as we look at ArtsKC website, the thing we did is we threw it into this site that does a quick mobile speed check. And the site loaded in 3.8 seconds, which is considered slow inside of the relative to other websites. And a lot of that has to do with potentially the amount of content and then the size of images on the site. So there are ways to go through after you understand the site's slow to make changes to it with optimizing both the type of content and the size of images on your site. We did the broken links checker using a site tool called Dead Link Checker, and all these links and all these tools are going to be provided to you in the do-it-yourself doc. So don't worry about trying to capture all the information. But what was interesting about ArtsKC is we found they have 2,000 URLs or 1,908 URLs. So those are individual web pages. If you think about the site, there's almost 2,000 pages on it, which is an enormous site. 92 broken links. So across those 2,000, there are 92 links here. And then you can get a quick link to all the dead links so you can figure out what's going on. You can make these changes quickly on your own site, clean up the dead links. What dead links do is it creates kind of a negative SEO impression. So when Google scans your site and sees dead links, it takes away some of the SEO juice for your site. This is not terrible by any means. In fact, it's pretty good considering the number of sites they have and that it's not something that is updated on a regular basis. But you'd be surprised at what you find when you scan your own site. We also uploaded the site speeder into the PageSpeed Insights to see what the desktop speed was. And there, on the desktop, which is different from the mobile view, the speed was moderate. So not too bad, medium-sized speed rate. The mobile, just because of the type of device and the structure for those devices, was slower. These are quick insights that you can get through doing digital landscape review. The other thing that we look at, and it's hard to do sometimes internally, is take a kind of third-party look at the actual site, like reviewing the words. I can look at your website and have never known anything about your organization. I should be able to quickly know what's unique about you, what's your value proposition, what's the main message I convey to me. I want to be able to get a general understanding of what you do, be able to quickly get to the information that I want as a user, and then I want to also be able to get to the point of your website that you want me to, the call to action. Like if you want me to sign up to an event, I need to see that right away so I know what I'm supposed to do here. So we take a general look at the website, we look at the positioning statements, the messaging, and we get a deeper understanding into how that site is conveying what you do. When I say it's harder to do that internally, a lot of times organizations are so in the know or they're just so involved in their own stuff that they can't objectively look at messaging. So if you don't have to hire somebody to give you a messaging overview. You could just say, hey, I'll review your site and give you feedback. If you review my site and give me feedback. There's lots of ways to get this third-party objective view of your site from a messaging standpoint, but you definitely want to do that from time to time. 47% of buyers 3 to 5 pieces of content before engaging with a sales rep. So once again, the information on your site is so important that if I go to your site and I can't understand what you do, I'm going to go to the next site or the next site or the next site. We want you guys to always be standing out clear to your audiences. The other thing to think about when you think about messaging on websites is what's called meta descriptions. So meta description is these little black type underneath the linked page content. So Google, when you Google anything, I just Googled ArtsKC. This is what comes up, and Google will automatically pull text off of your website. Based on, unless you tell it to do something else. So in this particular instance, when Google pulled up ArtsKC homepage, they pulled a little snippet of text that's in the kind of like the small middle section of their website. They got hundreds of different words or phrases, places on their homepage, but Google wanted to pick this one for some reason, and it's probably not the best default text that you would want under ArtsKC Home. This is speaking specifically to a business. So it says, help me find information about connecting my business to the arts. What we'd want probably here is ArtsKC. We serve the arts community in the KC area, connecting businesses and organizations, and they're more of a general value statement, not just this default one. So if you have your own websites on WordPress, there is a Yoast plugin. It's called Yoast Yoast SEO plugin. It's free, and it allows you to go in and you can type in, I want to have key phrases that I want my site to look for or for SEO for. and you can type in the exact wording that you want to show up here. So you can set that wording directly into your site if you have a Yoast plugin, or if you have a web background where you can go in and do it in the programming language. Most of us don't have that. Or you have a web developer, you can tell them, hey, on this page, I want this to be my meta description. On this page, I want this to be my meta description. It's really important to get those rights, because when somebody's searching, they're reading what the page is, and then they're usually reading this to see if it's something they want to pop into or not. So getting those updated is an important part of your optimizing of your website. Speaking of search engines, we see a lot of organizations that focus a lot of effort on search engine, and then we see a lot of organizations that don't even think about search engines for traffic. But I think regardless of whether you're really focused on an SEO strategy or not, understanding some of the basics around SEO are important for your website, for your digital footprint. The tool that we recommend and use a lot is called SEO Moz, and it's a free tool you can get, and it'll just quickly give an analysis of your website from a search engine optimization standpoint. And the first thing that we look at is we want to know, is Google Analytics installed on your site? So we run this little, we run your site through this little with test. And not only does it tell me that you have Google Analytics on your site, it tells me any type of tool that you have installed on your site. So I can see that ArtsKC had constant contact widgets on their site. They had Yoast SEO widgets on their sites. They had several other different things. It's kind of fun to use this to scan your competitors or some other sites just to see what they're using, what kind of technology they're using. But it gives us a quick indicator of, yeah, you've got enough, you've got the right stuff on your site to start with. Then when we run the SEO Moz site, we're looking at real quickly, what's the domain authority? So SEO Moz says that this is a 35 authority ranking. That's a good ranking. Anything kind of 30 to 70 is in the good range. That means that ArtsKC has a credible ranking according to the search engines. But any organization like yours that is linked to ArtsKC, you can also get some of the boost in their credibility by being connected to this organization. It also shows us that 26,000 inbound links, so 26,000 different links back to ArtsKC, which is a huge number, which really drives some of the search engine optimization for ArtsKC. So any organization that's linked to them is getting also some of the benefits of that inbound link. The other thing we look at on SEO Moz is what are the keywords that SEO Moz sees ArtsKC ranking for. So this is a quick list of the keyword, the top 15 keywords, and the actual rank that Google shows for this listing. So if I typed in Arts in KC, the first that would come up would be artskc.org. If I type in Kansas City, Missouri, the third thing that pops up would be ArtsKC. All the way down to thank you, artistic. If I type in that keyword phrase, ArtsKC would be the 25th result in the search engine results, which is probably on page 3 or 4. So when you look at your keywords, if they're the right keywords, that's good. You would certainly want people to find ArtsKC when they were typing in Arts and KC, etc. If you have weird stuff like PHMS ArtsKC, that's not necessarily weird, but things that may not be as relevant, that's okay too. It's not a bad thing. What you really don't have is the wrong information showing up here, or not seeing any high level rankings. That means you have an opportunity to really invest in some search engine optimization. Next thing we look at, social. Social media is big, especially now with what's going on in the pandemic. The traffic on social media has been growing for the last decade. I wrote a book about social media 10 years ago. I'm a very very big social media enthusiast, but I think that you really have to just be super practical about social media because you can spend a lot of time and waste a lot of time on social media unless you're very strategic about it. Um, so when we look at these audits, we want to see like what are all the social media sites that you're on? That's one of the first things. And I don't recommend being on too many sites than you can actually keep up with from a content standpoint. But there is a website out here that you can quickly check called Name Checker to see, put your ArtsKC name in there and see which sites are available. So if it's green, you could still reserve a social media spot on that site. And if it's got a red through it, you can't. And you can click through and you can see who has that site. In this case, most of these uh, are owned by ArtsKC. So this is their Twitter account they already have, their Facebook account they already have. But if they wanted to boost their overall social footprint, they could get an Pinterest account or they can get a Meetup account. There's more accounts that could be garnered based on this particular keyword here. Then we want to look at your overall sentiment on social media, and in this case, the sentiment is 9-1, which is good. It means a lot of people are talking favorably about ArtsKC. You've got 292 mentions recently, 82 different users talking about ArtsKC. That's a really good footprint for the organization. We look at some other things on social media, like how is it branded? Does it look clean across from Twitter when you jump from Twitter, Facebook to LinkedIn, to Instagram? Do I have a common feel? Like that's super important. And there's other things that we look at from an engagement standpoint on social media, like how often people are liking or mentioning or engaging with your brand. Those are all also important. And we kind of walk through how to do that or some questions to ask of yourself inside that digital landscape review document I'll share. But after we go for social, then we look at review sites. And reviews are really important. 85% of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. And when we looked at Ask ArtsKC, we realized that there was an overall good 4.6 is an overall good Google rating, but there was one recent negative rating, which Mariah told me she found out it was somebody that was actually hiding behind a fake name. So this is not a legit review, but but nobody knows that except people internal. So it is a real review from the perception of most people. And the fact that it was responded to properly was great because that's the first thing you want to do. If you get a bad review, always respond and ask them to reach out to you. And if you go in and expand on it, there was a good explanation and a request to ask out. So from a casual viewer, there was a negative review, there was a positive response, it was handled, it's not being ignored. That's super important. But the other thing we realized is that there's not a lot of new reviews. Like this is 8 months old. So the strategy would be, okay, we know we've got a negative review, but we got a bunch of good ones. If you kind of scroll all the way down, which I can on the slide here, but everything else was like 5 stars. So we have a lot of great reviews after or before this one, but not a lot since. So to be intentional about getting more recent reviews would be super important. And right now is a good time to reach out to people and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Post a review on our Google page. It would really help us out. You're going to get a lot of responses just by making a direct ask. But those reviews are super, super important. When we look at marketing, we need to be able to go inside the existing email software, whether that's Constant Contact, whether that's MailChimp or your CRM, Blackbaud. There's all sorts of different ways to send emails, and we want to look at those. And what we're looking for is what are the key things, or what's the open rate? You should have open rates over 20%. If you don't, there's something wrong. If you're doing really good with your email marketing, you could have open rates as much as 50%. So that means that even at the 50% open rate, only 1 in 2 people are opening your emails. So it's not, and if you got a good rating at 20%, 8 out of 10 people aren't seeing your emails. So you can't rely on email alone, but email is the cheapest and easiest way usually to get in front of your audiences. Once we look at open rates, we want to look at click-through rates. So if you've got an event that you're sending out to people and ask them to learn more and they're clicking through, We want to see that at a certain rate. And you can test messages. You can do A/B testing inside of emails to see, does this invite message work better than this invite message? So there's a lot of things we can look at inside of email services. But if you've never used an email software before, you've just done Google emails, and then there's a whole lot to audit and review, except thinking through your existing organization and should you commit or invest or find a different email software tool that you should be thinking about using. And finally, paid media, like this is the big one. This is where you start spending money. And with profit specifically, we find that it's important to make sure you've got a good strategy when you're looking to consider spending any money online. There are good ways to get your events out in front of the public. Facebook ads is still a really strong way to do that. You just have to be really smart about how you build the lists and how you design those ads and A/B test them. Google ads, not as strong. LinkedIn ads is a very expensive way, but for some organizations, it's the right audience. There are other types of digital tactics. There's geofencing, there's IP targeting. There's a lot of unique ways to get your events in front of different audiences that I think are worth doing some having some consideration for. Depending on your budget and what your expectations are, there's a lot of digital advertising options out there. And if you use any, then during this digital land review, we would dig in and see if you're optimized, if you're getting results you should be getting, and kind of talking about what the target should be for if you're going to spend $1,000 on Facebook, what should be, what should those metrics look like, how many impressions should you get, how many click-throughs, how many sign-ups, and then how do you set it up properly so you can actually measure that kind of spend. So when we wrap it all up, the three things that you should do from here, and then we'll have some Q&A, is one, complete your own digital landscape review. We've got all the tools to walk you through doing it with all the links to the different websites that I showed you. Number two, remember that your company is only, the digital footprint is just a small footprint of the bigger picture. So if you're going to spend time now thinking about evaluating your digital footprint and your digital landscape, also think about some of those other tactics you've been using and maybe dig into those a little bit now. Mail, print, any of your event marketing. Now is a great time to really assess all of those historically, and then think about putting together a strong plan for your next events. Events might not be a option for you right now. And in that case, thinking about what's the right strategy, where do we spend energy right now from a marketing perspective? Is it best to spend some time on branding and awareness? Or are there options for some online digital activities, an online store, an online fundraising campaign, or landing pages? There's different things that you can do right now. And now is the right time to really spend thinking about that. And then third, consider requesting some audit support from ArtsKC. We've been talking to Mariah about how we can make ourselves available through ArtsKC to help individual organizations. I know it's a kind of limited scope of people that they can filter through, and I'll let Mariah explain that a little bit more. But if you really feel like you could use some help in this endeavor, I think Mariah and I are trying to figure out how to do that for as many organizations as we can. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for a minute and then allow us to maybe do some Q&A.
Hi, everyone. It's Mariah KC. I finally got my audio and video figured out, so thanks for your patience at the beginning, and thank you to Joe for just jumping in. I was hoping to give a proper introduction, but I did want to say thank you to Joe and his company for all of the support that they've given ArtsKC as I've been kind of building out audience development and how to help you all build your marketing capacity over the past couple years. Joe's been a really great partner in that. And he is bringing this webinar to us free today, which is great. So we'll leave this time for Q&A. If any of you have specific questions. You can also feel free to share your own screens if you have, you're looking at the back end of your website and you have a question for Joe. So thanks again, Joe, and I'll open the floor to questions.
Yeah, a question on the chat from Mary Beth about Instagram ads. And the question is, should we be using Instagram ads since our posts won't directly link to anything unless we do? And I'll answer that kind of two ways. One is we've been using Instagram influencers much more than we've been using Instagram ads. So there are influencers. These are people that are have a large number of Instagram followers, and they are they're always open to some sort of paid engagement. So we have a company that's working on getting hand sanitizers out to the marketplace right now, bundled with some wellness products. And so we've got a bunch of wellness influencers that have 20, 30,000 fans that are willing to post something about their product and a link to the product itself on the page. And we found that using an influencer has a much better ROI than just doing an ad. So ads are effective, but a stronger strategy right now is finding a group of influencers that might be that share your target audience, and for $100, $200, which sounds like a lot for just a post, but for the bang for their buck compared to ads, it's sometimes a much better option.
So Joe, I have a follow-up question. Can you give us, I know this is a bit loaded and has a lot of answers, but if they were looking at Instagram influencers, what is a follower size that is useful to spend $100 or $200?
So you've got to look at both followers, and then you got to kind of look at the engagement. So it's not just followers, because it's easy to go buy followers. So all of these influencers will just buy followers and they're not really getting the engagement on their posts. So you kind of got to look at both. But I would start with 5,000 to 10,000 and up is pretty good. Then engagement wise, you just kind of got to look at it. You can subjectively do it yourself, just jumping on their page and scrolling through and seeing if they're getting some. But you can also, when you reach out to them, you can ask them for specific metrics. Like, we want to see your Instagram analytics before we agree. Molly is on this call with me. She's one of our marketing coordinators. So we just worked on this project for like a Botox and lip filler and kind of aesthetics company. And we reached out to 15, I think, influencers. And Molly, you want to jump in on what kind of metrics you were looking at quickly to kind of find the right ones?
So basically, yeah, absolutely. So we reached out to influencers in the particular areas where the offices were located. And we just wanted to make sure that they were kind of on brand for aesthetics. A lot of these influencers talked about like skincare, working out, eating right, so on and so forth. And then we wanted them to have a following of at least a few thousand and up. And so basically influencers kind of either charge per post based on how many followers they have, or if you have equal product swap. So what the aesthetic places, because they were offering like free services, which would have been more than a couple $100, it was an even swap for them to do a post. And it really drove traffic like instantaneously, which was really great. So the aesthetic company that we worked with just said, like, all of a sudden, once an influencer would do their post, the phones like really started ringing. So they do have a lot of influence, and it's great when they can stand behind the brand.
Thanks, Molly. Any other questions on the Instagram or other questions in general?
Anyone? Oh, sorry, Joe. Anyone that's on the phone and not able to put in chat, this is your opportunity to ask a question if you want to.
I have a quick question, please.
Oh.
Under the email marketing discussion, you mentioned click-through rates. What would be a average size that we should expect to see on a click-through rate?
It's kind of across the board. I would say that, if you're getting 3 to 10% in that range, you're probably doing pretty good. If it's less than 3, it's probably not an attractive enough offer. And if it's more, you're doing great as far as click-throughs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I can walk through, if there are no questions, I can do a quick walkthrough of the do-it-yourself guide so everybody can sees what it is if you want. Or we got another question coming here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I had a quick question. So back to the Instagram post where you've used influencers before. I actually have reached out to some influencers just in the Kansas City area. I can totally see how that would translate very well to like a beauty or wellness. But as far as having that translate to performing arts, how does that work? I mean, do you invite them to a performance and then have them do a review of your performance? Because most influencers, they're in this this is their business. So they want like, one post, they want to get paid, but then having, them inviting to a performing arts event, that takes, hours out of their evening. It's a bigger time commitment. How do you feel, or have you had any experience with people being, down for that, or?
I think it's a great question because, obviously the aesthetics is a pretty straightforward use of influencers, but it gets down to doing the research and finding the right influencer, and then what's the right approach. So if you found a handful of influencers that you thought this person looks like that would be the type of person that I would see in my audience to begin with, that one kind of litmus test. But then I reach out and say, I know you're an influencer. It looks like you do a lot of stuff. Would you be interested in working with a nonprofit? We are a nonprofit, so we don't really have room to pay you, but we could give you options to come and visit some of our shows and come visit some of our performances. Some of those are going to say, yeah, absolutely, I would love to get back. I'd love to be part of the community. That's part of my brand. That's who I am. That's what I want to be. And I would love to come to see one of your performances, and I'd love to post while I'm there, and I'd love to share the story. That's just a way to give. So I think you just have to think about it just like you would a potential donor. I mean, there's a certain segment of the population that's going to be interested in the arts, and there's going to be some influencers in that segment. And then you just reach out and say, how could we work together, and just be very honest and open about it. I think I would guess you'd have some really good success with that. The hard part would be tracking it.
This is Mariah with ArtsKC. I'm going to jump in. I have done some kind of personal side gig stuff, promoting theater and different concerts, and I've had some success getting influencers involved. And I have some insight on that too, but I also wanted to let everybody know that we have an upcoming class specifically on Instagram where we'll cover all of these more in-depth questions about social strategy for Instagram, and then we'll have another one for Facebook and so on. And we'll also have more in-depth classes on email marketing as well. I see some questions coming in for email. Breeze Richardson has a question about what is a good, you talked about click-through rates, Joe, and what's a good open rate? I've always heard at least 20%, at least in the last couple of years. That's been a good open rate, but do you have any other numbers?
20% would be a good open rate.
So if you're above that, right?
Yeah, if you're above that, you're doing well. I've seen 20 to 50% on our campaigns. Email is really sensitive to your list. So if you have an existing list that you've been cultivating for a long time, then your open rate should be higher. It should be maybe 30, 40%. If you go out and you're buying a list or you're collecting a lot of names and just put them into your CRM just as fast as you can, your open rate is going to be less. Most likely it's going to be, could be under 20%. There is a tool, I'll put it in the text box, called Bright Verify. And we use that. We run all of our email lists through Bright Verify, and it'll quickly tell you these are good emails to send to, these are so-so emails to send to, and then here's no people do not send to. If you use that tool, you could probably increase your open rates up to 40%, but it'll take a lot of your emails away. Like it'll say, don't send it to people. They're like, this person's perfectly good to send to. So you just have to understand that the science behind Bright Verify. They're looking at all the search engines, all the spam bots, and they're saying these are really good emails to send to. These are a little fuzzy. So it's a great tool to use trying to maximize your email open rates.
And that same topic, we had a question from Clint about ways to grow your email list. If you wanted to just touch on a couple really good ways to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you collect email anytime you touch a potential customer or attend. So at your events, sign-up sheets, got to be using emails that way. Online, if you can come up with some giveaways, you can use that to entice people. It's hard; people don't give their email away anymore. So newsletters are good. I mean, that's a real common one. If you've got a highly valuable newsletter, people can sign up for that and get more information from you. If you have a list of like a bunch of people on a different platform, like maybe you've got a bunch of Facebook followers or a bunch of Twitter followers or Instagram followers, there are tools out there that will let you take that data and they'll extract an email from it, so you can work that way. We use a software called Seamless. I'll send it to you. Seamless.ai. This is more like prospecting emails, so we can go in and we can enter in. We want to talk to business owners in a 30-mile radius of Kansas City that work inside of the accounting industry or something. And you get a list of people, and it'll have their emails on it. So you can, that's a little more salesy prospecting for emails. Those are definitely cold emails. You would definitely want to scrub those through Bright Verify. And then LinkedIn is probably the other one. We use LinkedIn to search contacts, and with Seamless, we can extract email from LinkedIn if we're not connected to them. If we are connected to them, we usually get them, but a lot of times it might be a second or third contact. So Seamless has a little plugin that you can pull the email without being there's about a 70% match rate. So 7 out of 10 of them you can get that way.
Great, thank you. We also, there was a question. Oh, Breeze said she uses Eventbrite for RSVPs for free events, and then adds those emails following each. Yeah, and then there was a question directed towards me from the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. If we know when those specific classes on Instagram, Facebook, email sessions will be happening. I don't have exact dates for you, but we're looking at all 3 of those happening in the next 2 weeks. So I am hoping to have classes just like this for all of you, open to everybody, at least twice a week for the foreseeable future. And then when we get back into, we can all gather together, we'll probably do webinar and group learning like in person. Originally, that was the idea, to have marketing capacity to learn together. So now we just get to do it from our homes, which is exciting. I'm looking back over here. So Clint's asking about a question, a tool for connecting social media and driving them to your newsletter.
Depends on your newsletter. Most newsletters, like if you use a Constant Contact or they'll have social media plugins where you can share those directly. Or you can go into your Facebook and your Twitter accounts, Facebook primarily, and I think there's a sign up. There's a sign up feature on Facebook pages that you can create your own ad for people to sign up for your newsletter on when they're on your Facebook page. Those are built in native to Facebook.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. If anybody wanted to ask about branding or anything about the digital landscape reviews. So a question popped up. I will be sending out the DIY form along with a couple other information pages that Joe has shared with me after this phone call a little bit later this evening. And then you will also get an email from me later this week with an application to apply for a free in-depth digital landscape review from Frost. Okay, any more questions for Joe or Molly that's still on? Okay.
All right. Well, Mariah, thank you. I just got to say, kudos to you for putting this on and making it digital and pivoting in your own way to serve your audience, because organizations like yours are so important right now to connect everybody when we're in this disjointed world and still provide meaning, value. Kudos for you and what your organization is doing. It's so important right now.
Thank you. We just hope that it will be really helpful to all of you. What we want to avoid is, you getting on a webinar and moving. That didn't give me anything useful. So be looking out for emails from me just to continually get your feedback and make sure that we're bringing you info that's useful for right now and for everybody to come back stronger when we can be in person. So again, Joe and everybody that has joined the call today, feel free to send me an email. My email address is mhilson at artskc.org. And I will also send everybody a follow-up email. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Yep.